Imhotep. It is Sunday, April 30th, 2023, and we are live. So it's been a very, very busy weekend. I was on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday. Saturday and Sunday, I was teaching two fantastic online classes, online history classes. And also Saturday, I did a fantastic interview with Dr. Charles Finch. Dr. Charles Finch is an Egyptian scholar. He's a scholar dealing with Nile Valley civilization, Nile Valley history. We talked about Queen Cleopatra and Queen Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, Queen Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, and he responded to Egyptian officials' statements that Netflix's Queen Cleopatra had no African ancestry. Okay, so we're going to talk about Harry Belafonte today. He passed away this past week at the age of 96. You can give us a call with your thoughts about Harry Belafonte as well. You can post your comments here. We'll try to share them here on the broadcast. But also, I'm going to share an excerpt of this interview that I did with Dr. Charles Finch as well. Okay, it's a fantastic interview, and we got into a lot of history. Also, this past week, we know that the accuser of Emmett Till, Carolyn Bryant Donham, she passed away at the age of 88 from cancer. She was in hospice, and we know she had been sick. We know there was an attempt to try to get an arrest warrant from 1955 served. And that I told you that arrest warrant was not going to be served. We know that the investigation, there was an investigation done by the Department of Justice that concluded in 2021, and without any charges being filed. It was concluded December 6, 2021, when that Department of Justice investigation closed. Right here on this show, I went through the 16-page report from the Department of Justice and broke down to you why there were no charges filed. It wasn't because of racism. It was because of lack of evidence. It was not because of racism. It was because of lack of evidence. I did a 2-hour broadcast Friday after I finished Roland Martin show. I did a 2-hour broadcast here on our social media platforms dealing with the 16-page report from the Department of Justice. And the name of the report is Emmett Till Notice to Close File. Emmett Till Notice to Close File. It's at justice.gov, U.S. Department of Justice, from December 6, 2021. Go watch the 2-hour plus broadcast that I did on Friday, April 29th, Friday, April 28th, 2023, Friday, April 28th, 2023, on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, where I get deep into this report. On today's show, we'll just look at this report briefly. But what I'm going to show you will, once again, show you why charges were not filed because of lack of evidence. Now, back in 2017, Professor Timothy Tyson, who's a Princeton University professor, Professor Timothy Tyson published a book. He wrote a book that was published in 2017 called The Blood of Emmett Till. And in this book and in articles about the book, he said that Carolyn Bryant Donham recanted testimony that she gave at the trial in 1955. All right. Now, the problem was that when it came time for him to provide evidence to back up the allegations that he was making, that she recanted her testimony, because the Department of Justice investigated this. So when it came time to provide evidence, he could not provide the evidence to document that she recanted her testimony. So once you go through and look at this report, you'll see why, there's a lack of evidence, and they put him on the witness stand. Her defense attorneys will destroy him on cross-examination. I could destroy him on cross-examination. I haven't been to law school. I've taken 2 law classes, but I haven't been to law school. So we're going to talk about this as well. And we're going to go through briefly, because this is only a 2-hour show, that Department of Justice report. And then, last week we ran out of time. I did not get a chance to get to this topic here that we discussed on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, back on April 11th, 2023. But it deals with how spanking children, for African Americans, spanking children is a holdover from slavery, and spanking children was not traditionally practiced in West Africa. Okay, so we'll deal with that as well on today's show. We may be able to squeeze in 1 or 2 more topics and get your calls in as well. Calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. We'll also give you some information about the online history classes that I teach on the weekends. We did a free session today of Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement. Visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, and you can register for that free class session. We did about 2 hours and 20 minutes we did today of that class. We had a great discussion today, dealt with a lot of history. We dealt with the Civil War, and we talked about the Homestead Act of 1862. Did you know that the U.S. government gave away 270 million acres of land for 124 years, starting in 1862. It ended in 1976, and African Americans were largely shut out of that massive land giveaway. That's the Homestead Act of 1862. Okay, so we'll give you some information on that as well. Now, on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man or woman's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his or her actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here. We deal with current events, history, politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word Kemet, Kemet, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. All right, well, humanitarian and actor extraordinaire and director Harry Belafonte passed away at the age of 96. This past week, we got the news, and I saw coverage of it on MSNBC. I saw coverage of it on Roland Martin Unfiltered. Now, Roland did at least 2 days of coverage dealing with Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte was a friend of Roland Martin. Harry Belafonte was also one of my frat brothers as well. He was an honorary member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. On Friday's show, Roland also continued his tribute to Harry Belafonte. Now, he didn't let the panel, I was on the panel, he didn't let the panel comment on Harry Belafonte. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of time constraints or what have you, but this is my show, so I'm going to do it here. So, I remember seeing Harry Belafonte in Buck and the Preacher when I was a kid. Now, I saw it after it originally came out, and I remember watching it on TV, Buck and the Preacher. And also, I remember seeing Harry Belafonte in, Uptown Saturday Night. Okay, Geechee Dan, Uptown Saturday Night with Sidney Poitier and Bill Cosby. We know we lost Sidney Poitier last year. So Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte are reunited, two extraordinary humanitarians, actors, and directors. There was a good article from the New York Times dealing with Harry Belafonte. Harry Belafonte, 96, dies, barrier breaking singer, actor, and activist. Barrier breaking singer, actor, and activist. And we posted, there was a picture of Harry Belafonte. We posted it on our fan page, the African History Network. It got about 2,700 likes. Okay. Check out this article from the New York Times. There's also a good one from thegrio.com as well. From thegrio.com also. Okay. That's not the article that I want. There's one from thegrio.com as well. This is the one I want here on Harry Belafonte. Let's pull this up. Harry Belafonte, 96, dies, barrier-breaking singer, actor, and activist. Okay. In the 1950s, when segregation was still widespread, Harry Belafonte's ascent to the upper echelon of show business was historic, but his primary focus was civil rights. Okay. This is, let's see here. All right, now, and here's a picture of Harry Belafonte right here as well. Harry Belafonte was not the first Black entertainer to transcend racial boundaries, but none had made as much of a splash as he did. For a few years, no one in music, Black or white, was bigger. Okay, and in I think it was 1957, he was the in 1957, he was the highest paid African American. He was the highest paid African American entertainer. All right, we're up against a break. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from breaking form.
Host Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
All right, welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Okay, the call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right, I want to go to this article dealing with Harry Belafonte from, this is from the New York Times. Harry Belafonte, 96, dies, barrier-breaking singer, actor, and activist. So Harry Belafonte, who stormed the pop charts and smashed racial barriers in the 1950s with his highly personal brand of folk music, and who went on to become a dynamic force in the civil rights movement, died on Tuesday. Okay, so that was Tuesday, April 25th. He died on Tuesday at his home on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. He was 96 years old. Now, the cause of death was congestive heart failure. The cause of death was congestive heart failure, said Ken Sunshine, his longtime spokesman. Now, at a time when segregation was still widespread and African-American faces were still a rarity on screens, large and small, on television as well as on the big screen, Harry Belafonte's ascent to the upper echelon of show business was historic. He was not the first African-American entertainer to transcend racial boundaries. Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, and others had achieved stardom before him, but none had made such a splash as he did. And for a while, no one in music, black or white, was bigger than Harry Belafonte. So I remember seeing him on the Muppet Show when I was a kid. I remember Harry Belafonte's involvement with We Are the World. Okay, We Are the World, Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson. I think that was about 1984 or so, We Are the World. I remember him in Buck and the Preacher. Okay, now in my online class, Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, the Black Power Movement, we talk about something called the Black Exodus of 1879. And the Black Exodus of 1879 was occurred when you had about 6,000 African Americans migrating from Louisiana and Texas out west to Kansas. All right. This was in 1879. Well, so this is, and they were called exodusters. All right. And they're looking for a better way of life. They're trying to escape Jim Crow laws, trying to escape segregation and domestic terrorism, things of this nature. Well, the movie Buck and the Preacher, which was directed by Sidney Poitier, the movie Buck and the Preacher deals with a wagon train of newly freed African-American slaves, former slaves, who are going out west to Kansas, and they're looking for a better way of life. They want to own land, etc. So it's not in 1879. It happens. Buck and the Preacher is set after slavery ends, after 1865, but before 1879. But it is similar in the premise. Okay, it's similar in the premise, and it starred co-star Ruby Dee as well. Ruby Dee was Sidney Poitier's wife, so that's a powerful movie, Buck and the Preacher. And then I remember him in the I remember Harry Belafonte in Carmen, with Carmen Jones with Dorothy Dandridge. Okay, and Carmen Jones was an adaptation. It was a musical, but it was an adaptation of the opera Carmen. Okay. And that was fantastic. I remember watching that on television, probably on a Sunday afternoon or something like that, and I liked Harry Belafonte, but I was watching it for Dorothy Dandridge. I'm just gonna be honest with you, because I mean, hey, I was a boy, so hey, I was watching it for Dorothy Dandridge. But Harry Belafonte did a good job. He held his own in that movie also. All right, now, born in Harlem to West Indian immigrants. So I guess some people say he didn't deserve reparations. But born in Harlem to West Indian immigrants, Harry Belafonte almost single-handedly ignited a craze for Caribbean music with hit records like Deo, the Banana Boat song. And I've been watching performances of him doing Deo, the Banana Boat song as well. I remember him. I think he sung that on the Muppet Show also, because I saw one performance of him on the Muppet Show playing the drums. And also records like Jamaica Farewell. Now, his album was called Calypso in 1956. And this album included both of these songs, Deo, the Banana Boat song, and Jamaica Farewell. His album Calypso reached the top of the Billboard album chart shortly after its release in 1956 and stayed there for 31 weeks. 1956. This is the same year of the Montgomery bus boycott, which started December 5th, 1955, ended December 20th, 1966, lasted 381 days. We know he became excellent friends, close friends with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., as well as Coretta Scott King and the King family. He became active in the civil rights movement. And also in February of 1968, Johnny Carson let Harry Belafonte guest host the Tonight Show for an entire week. And Harry Belafonte used that platform to push the civil rights issues and push the civil rights movement. And he had one of the guests that he had on the show, I think it was the last day, which would have been a Friday. He had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. on that show. But that was probably the blackest week we had ever seen on network television, the blackest week, night after night, 5 nights. He had all these African-American guests, Nipsey Russell and others. I think he had John Lewis on. There's a documentary that Joanne Reed on MSNBC, she did a documentary dealing with this, and it's called The Sit-In, and it's on Peacock. It's a fantastic documentary. All of the footage, some of the footage of those interviews has been lost, okay? But she showed excerpts of footage that was still captured, and you get to see the interview that with Dr. King. And this was 2 months before Dr. King was assassinated. Also, he had Robert Kennedy on as well. Okay, John F. Kennedy's brother. Also, this was shortly before Robert Kennedy was assassinated. Also, but Harry Belafonte used this platform, this opportunity that Johnny Carson gave him, to shine a spotlight on the civil rights movement and bring that movement into people's living rooms. Now, this is at a time when there are only 3 channels. Okay, there are only 3 major channels, 3 major networks. We didn't have cable. Okay, this is 1968. We ain't had cable television. All right, so we ain't had the internet and cable television and smartphones, none of that stuff. So people watch CBS, NBC, and ABC. All right, so check out that documentary on Peacock called The Sit-In. All right, now, Calypso reached the top of the Billboard album chart shortly after its release in 1956 and stayed there for 31 weeks, coming just before the breakthrough of Elvis Presley, who stole a lot of his style from African Americans. It was said to be the first album, Calypso was said to be the first album by a single artist to sell more than 1 million copies, Now, Harry Belafonte was equally successful as a concert attraction. He was handsome and charismatic. He had audiences spellbound with dramatic interpretations of a repertoire that encompassed folk traditions from all over the world, rollicking calypsos like Matilda, uh, Matilda work songs like Lead Man Holler, tender ballads like Scarlet Ribbons. Now, by 1959, he was the most highly paid black performer, black performer in history. By 1959, Harry Belafonte was the highest paid black performer in history, with fat contracts for appearances in Las Vegas, at the Greek Theater in Los Angeles, and at the Palace in New York. Now, success as a singer led to movie offers, and Harry Belafonte soon became the first black actor to achieve major success in Hollywood as a leading man. His movie stardom was short-lived, though, and it was his friendly rival, Sidney Poitier, who has Caribbean roots as well. So I guess Sidney Poitier wouldn't get reparations either. Sidney Poitier, not Harry Belafonte, who became the first bona fide black matinee idol. Okay, we're going to continue this on the other side of the break. You can also give us a call, 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. You listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, everybody. Back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? Back from break in 4 minutes. We've got Carol, Buck and the Preacher, one of my favorite movies. She said, Buck and the Preacher is one of my favorite movies. I like Buck and the Preacher. I watched that. I rented that on Amazon or something like that. And Buck and the Preacher, I got that through Amazon Prime, I think it is. Okay, we've got Sharon Simpson Anderson joining us also. How you doing, Sharon? We've got Sherwin as well. We Are the World, Let's Make It a Better Place. That was my graduation song in elementary school. All right. Yeah, I remember when We Are the World, and then there was a time when all the radio stations played We Are the World, like at the same time, like at noon or something like that. Like it's 12 noon or something, like I forgot what time, but all the radio stations across the country, they played that We Are the World like at the same time. Okay, we're back from break in 3 minutes. Listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF on Michael Imhotep. The call-in number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right. We'll talk about Harry Belafonte a few more minutes. Then I have to let you hear the interview that I did with Dr. Charles Finch, who's an Egyptian scholar and author and historian. And we dealt with Queen Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, and he refuted this nonsense coming from the Egyptian government that Cleopatra had no African ancestry. You don't want to miss that. Okay, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Back from break in 2 minutes. How's everybody doing? Okay, so who do we have here? We got Kenya Randall also. Kenya said, I remember that. Sharon Simpson Anderson said, yes, I remember Buck and the Preacher, also one of my favorite Westerns. But then also, Buck and now that's one of my favorite movies, Buck and the Preacher. But then the movie Posse, okay.
10, the Superstation, Detroit's only African American talk radio. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, Future Radio. Okay, so Bucking the Preacher, 1972. I remember seeing it. I didn't see it in 1972 because I was only 1 year old, but I remember watching it later on and watching it on television, and seeing Sidney Poitier, seeing Harry Belafonte, and it's a movie that takes place shortly after slavery ends. And now this piece right here, this is from Criterion.com. I was looking at some write-ups on Bucking the Preacher. Harry Belafonte plays a con man preacher in the movie, and Sidney Poitier is a guide who has relationships with Native Americans, and he has to navigate this wagon train of former slaves through Indian territory. Bucking the Preacher, with his routinely entertaining directorial debut, Sidney Poitier, alongside actor-producer Harry Belafonte, helped rewrite the history of the Western, bringing Black heroes to a genre in which they had always been sorely underrepresented. Combining boisterous buddy comedy with blistering Black Power era political fury, Sidney Poitier and a marvelously mischievous Harry Belafonte star as a tough and taciturn wagon master and an unscrupulous pistol-packing preacher who joined forces in order to take on the white bounty hunters, threatening a westward-bound caravan of people recently emancipated from slavery. That's what's so fascinating about this. Now, even though the movie's probably fictitious, things like this, things similar to this did happen, and that's the Black Exodus of 1879. 6,000 African Americans migrate from Louisiana and Texas, primarily out west to Kansas. And in this movie, they're migrating to Kansas. Now, a superbly crafted revisionist landmark, Bucking the Preacher subverts Hollywood conventions at every turn and reclaims the Western genre in the name of Black liberation. Okay, so check out that movie, Bucking the Preacher. It's an excellent movie. Ruby Dee is in it. She plays Sidney Poitier's wife as well, the brilliant and lovely Ruby Dee, who's an ancestor now also. So we've lost, Ruby Dee, Ozzie Davis. We've lost Cicely Tyson, Sidney Poitier. All of these fantastic actors and actresses, and they and a lot of them were involved in the civil rights movement also. Put their careers on the line, put their lives on the line. Dick Gregory as well. They were involved in the civil rights movement also. All right, now if we go back to this piece here from the New York Times. And then I'm going to let you hear an excerpt of the interview that I did with Dr. Charles Finch on Saturday, dealing with Queen Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, and rebuking the criticism coming from the Egyptian government on the ethnicity of Queen Cleopatra portrayed in the African Queens series from executive director Jada Pinkett Smith on Netflix. Now, success as a singer led to movies, and Harry Belafonte soon became the first Black actor to achieve major success in Hollywood as a leading man. But making movies was never Harry Belafonte's priority, and after A while, neither was music. He continued to perform into the 21st century and to appear in movies as well, although he had 2 long hiatuses from the silver screen. But his primary focus from the late 1950s on was civil rights. His primary focus from the late 1950s on was civil rights. Now, here's a picture of Harry Belafonte and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and the two are reunited now. This is from 1956. Okay, 1956. Let me see if we can pull this up here. Okay, yeah, this is from 1956. Now, this is has to be during the Montgomery bus boycott, because the Montgomery bus boycott goes on till December 20th, 1956. Early in his career, Harry Belafonte befriended the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and became not just a lifelong friend, but also an ardent supporter. Dr. King and Harry Belafonte at the Abyssinian Baptist Church in Harlem in 1956. Okay. Harry Belafonte put up much of the seed money to help start SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and was one of the principal fundraisers for the organization and Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. So SNCC comes out of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, right? So SCLC is founded in 1957. It's co-founded by Dr. King and Ella Baker and others, okay? And then in about April of 1960, SNCC is founded, and SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC comes out of SCLC, okay? And Ella Baker helps to found SNCC, and she tells them to she tells the, because SNCC was like founded by college students, you know, John Lewis and others, Diane Nash, and she tells them to stay independent of SCLC because she felt that they needed their own organization. All right. We know that Stokely Carmichael Kwame Ture is going to become chairman of SNCC in 1966, and you're going to have, and then you have a real infusion of the Black Power ideology, and really it's that element is there before Stokely Carmichael becomes chairman, but it really accelerates, and you're going to have those, and I'm going to try to put this as politely as I can, those civil rights activists, African American, who I do respect but disagree with, they're going to leave SNCC when SNCC adopts a Black Power ideology. And we know that it's going to be in about June of 1966 during the March Against Fear in Mississippi, when James Meredith is shot, and he's going on this march to call attention to segregation and things like this. He's shot. He's in the hospital. He can't continue to march. Dr. King and others come in. Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael, they come in to finish this march. They get arrested. And then when they come out from jail, it's June 1966, right about there. Kwame Ture gives a speech, and he talks about, we want Black power, we want Black power. And he drops the Black power phrase nationally. Now, in Eyes on the Prize, the second incarnation of Eyes on the Prize, not the first incarnation that deals with history from about 1955 to 1965 or so, 55 to about 68, something like that. The first Eyes on the Prize. There's a second Eyes on the Prize that picks up where the first one leaves off, and they interview Kwame Ture, Stokely Carmichael. They interview Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton, co-founders of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense. And Kwame Ture talks about Mukasa Dada, Willie Ricks. Willie Ricks was a member of SNCC, and I know Willie Ricks, Mukasa Dada. I've interviewed him here on the African History Network show, and it's Mukasa Dada and Kwame Ture who coined the term Black Power. And in Eyes on the Prize, Kwame Ture talks about how Mukasa Dada, Willie Ricks, was instrumental in priming the people on the ground with the phrase and ideology of Black power before Kwame Ture drops that phrase nationally in June of 1966 when he comes out from jail during the March Against Fear. All right. So it's Harry Belafonte who helped to fund SNCC and who helped to fund the organizing of SNCC, because this stuff costs money. All this stuff costs money. A lot of people make it look easy, things like this. If you don't do this type of work, if you don't do activism and things like this, you don't understand really how you need money to do all that stuff. And then you need money to bail people out of jail. Okay. It's people like Harry Belafonte who made all those movements possible. Harry Belafonte put up the seed money to help start SNCC, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and was one of the principal fundraisers for the organization and Dr. King's Southern Christian Leadership Conference. All that stuff costs money. Okay, you can't just call the phone company and say no justice, no peace, or keep hope alive, or whatever phrase you want to come up with, and they keep your phone lines on. No, they want some money. You can't call Xfinity, okay, and say right now it's correct wrong behavior, and they keep your internet service on. They want some money. All right, it costs money to do all this stuff. Harry Belafonte took part in the March on Washington in 1963. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. We'll talk briefly about the sit-in, the documentary The Sit-In, and when Harry Belafonte guest hosted for Johnny Carson in February 1968. We'll be back in a few minutes. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep, 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Stand by. How's everybody doing? Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. All right. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, or at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for the online classes that I teach also on Saturdays and Sundays. Back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing today? All right, we've got Joelle. How you doing, Joelle? We've got Sharon. Posse was great also. Yeah, the movie Posse. Posse was an excellent. Posse is one of my favorite movies because about a third of the cowboys in the Old West, a third of them were African American. And these were some bad brothers. You have the westward expansion of the U.S. They're going into Kansas territory, Nebraska territory. They're going into, the Dakotas and things like this. And they are trying to they want to own land. They're trying to escape the segregation in the South. And the term cowboy was originally a derogatory term for African American cattlemen. Okay, the term cowboy was originally a derogatory term for African American cattlemen. White men who herded cattle and worked with cattle, they were called cattlemen or cattle hands. These were white men. They called the African American men cowboys, called them boy to belittle them, dehumanize them. But they were so good at what they did, African Americans, they were so good at what they did that the term cowboy became a general term for cattlemen and those in the, you have the rodeos, but those roping the cattle and things like this, and it became a general term. Okay, in a lot of these movies, historic African American cowboys get represented as white cowboys in a lot of these various movies. Because we don't know this history, we don't know to fight back against this. What was so powerful about the movie Posse, directed by Melvin Van Peebles and Mario Van Peebles, is that it shined a light on the fact that a third of the cowboys approximately were African American. And when you watch the movie, it takes place in 1898 during the Spanish American War. Okay, it's a fantastic, because I talk about the movie in my classes. Stand by.
Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of these people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all on 910 AM Superstation.
All right. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM. Oh, hold on. We lost connection. How did that happen? Stand by. We got a call back. We lost connection with the radio station. Stand by. Let me call back in. Hold on. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation. All right, the calling number is 313-778-7600 is the calling number if you have a question or comment. Okay, Michelle Samuel said Harry Belafonte was a great activist. She's watching on Facebook. Sharon Simpson Anderson said Posse was also great. The movie Posse, starring Melvin Van Peebles, Mario Van Peebles, they directed the movie. You got Big Daddy Kane in the movie, Tiny Lister, Stephen Baldwin, Reginald Vale Johnson, who was on Family Matters, Carl on Family Matters. This is a fantastic movie. Also, Sally Richardson was in it, so that's why I was watching the movie, okay? Because Sally Richardson's in the movie. But Sally Richardson Whitfield, she's married to DeAndre Whitfield. Fantastic movie that also deals, even though I think it's a fictitious movie, it has a historical background. It takes place in 1898 during the Spanish-American War. You have Jesse Lee, I think his name is Jesse Lee, and he is in the Army, the U.S. Army. The Spanish-American War is Cuba fighting against Spain for their independence, okay? We know that Cuba was one of the island nations that the colonizer Christopher Columbus conquers on his 4 voyages, right about 1494. Well, the Spanish-American War and the U.S. gets involved in this war. Cuba is fighting against Spain for their independence. You have the group of army men that Mario Van Peebles is part of. They're forced to steal some gold from, I think it's Cuba, from the Cubans, okay? And then the backdrop is 1898. It's after Reconstruction ends in 1877. They talk about the grandfather clause of 1877, which was first started in Louisiana when Louisiana writes their state constitution in 1898. The grandfather clause was designed to suppress the African-American vote, because in a lot of these southern states, we were the majority of the voters because we were the majority of the population, and we are electing African-American men into public office. In the South Carolina state legislature, the majority of the people in the state legislature were African-American men. South Carolina is where the Civil War starts. So the grandfather clause of 1898 stated that if prior to 1867, if your grandfather could not vote, then you could not vote because your grandfather was a slave, right? Now, this was a way to get around the 13th Amendment of 1865. They kept looking for ways, these white supremacists kept looking for ways to get around the 13th Amendment. And the grandfather clause is one way that they do it. And they wanted to implement the grandfather clause to also get around the literacy test, the literacy test requirement, because you had a lot of poor white people who were illiterate. And if they applied the literacy test to them, they couldn't pass it either. So they come up with the grandfather clause so they don't eliminate too many illiterate white people. All right. So when you study this period of time, after Reconstruction ends in 1877, and you go from like 1877 to 1900, and you look at these laws being put in place, there was a fear of African Americans continuing to gain political power. All right. They didn't fear us exercising. They feared us having political power. This is why I tell well-meaning. A lot of people mean well when they say this, but I tell you, you've heard me on Roland Martin Unfiltered say this. You heard me on Faraji Muhammad Show, The Culture. You hear me right here on the African History Network Show. Stop telling African Americans to exercise their right to vote. You don't vote for exercise. If you want to exercise, you go to the gym and work out. You vote for power. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. When we change what the purpose of voting is, then we will realize the need to be better educated to get a better outcome. If you think that you just vote for exercise, if you think that you just vote for Dr. King and Fannie Lou Hamer, then you don't understand that you vote for power to be able to put in place policies that are beneficial to you, your family, your community, and your people nationwide. Then you could end up voting for people who work to dismantle the legacy of Fannie Lou Hamer and John Lewis and Hosea Williams and Diane Nash and Dr. King and things of this nature. Okay, because the purpose, you're not voting for the right purpose. Everybody else votes for power. Okay, they don't vote for exercise. We have to do the same thing. All right, now, in 1968, Harry Belafonte, because we got to wrap this conversation up because I got other topics to get to. In 1968, Harry Belafonte said guest hosted the Tonight Show, and it was there's a documentary about it called The Sit-In. Okay, The Sit-In. And I'm going to try to pull up something here on this. Just give me a second here. Yeah, Harry Belafonte hosted Tonight Show. Okay, I watched this documentary. It's a fantastic documentary. There is a article from the Daily Beast about this as well. And there's also one from IndieWire, The Sit-In, when Harry Belafonte, The Sit-In, revisit the lost week in 1968 when Harry Belafonte hosted the Tonight Show. Okay, if we look at this article quickly, then I want to move to, we're going to go to clip number one, Doug. I want to move to this information dealing with Queen Cleopatra VII and the interview I did with Egyptian scholar Dr. Charles Finch, who is African American, by the way. He's a scholar of Egyptian ancient Kemetic history, etc. So this article here from IndieWire is from September 10th, 2020. September 10th, 2020. And I want to pull up, we'll show you the name of this article here. This is The Sit-In, revisit the lost week in 1968 when Harry Belafonte hosted the Tonight Show. From executive producer and MSNBC host Joanne Reed, the film chronicles the seminal and almost forgotten moment in American history. Listen to the African History Network Show. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by. When we come back, I'm going to share with you the interview I did with Dr. Charles Finch on Saturday, April 29th. I'll share an excerpt of the interview. Bathroom break in 2 minutes. Bathroom break in 2 minutes. All right, I have to get ready for this next segment. Stand by. Bathroom break in 1 minute, everybody. Bathroom break in 1 minute.
Nine 10 AM Superstation, a division of Adele Media. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation. All right. Let's go back to this article here and shout out to everybody watching us on Facebook and YouTube. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting the African History Network show, finance the African History Network. Visit our website, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com. TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com connects you to our social media platforms. You can listen to audio podcasts of our radio shows. And then you also listen to 910 AM Superstation live, either through the radio or download the iHeartRadio app or the iTunes TuneIn radio app or iHeartRadio, and listen live to 910 AM Superstation WFDF. We have a PayPal Cash App information there, and also information on the online history classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, okay? So you can register for those classes also. We did a free class session today of Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Black Power Movement, 1800 to 1968. So right on the homepage of our website, click on free class session, April 30th, 2023, and you can go back and watch that. We did like 2.5 hours of that class. Okay, we were talking about the passing of Harry Belafonte right before the break, and I want to go to this article here. This deals with the documentary called The Sit-In. The Sit-In. And the Sit-In chronicles in 1968 when Harry Belafonte sat in for Johnny Carson for an entire week on the Tonight Show. The Sit-In revisit the lost week in 1968 when Harry Belafonte hosted the Tonight Show. This is from IndieWire.com, September 10th, 2020, by Tambe Obenson. Okay, and this is the name of the documentary, executive produced by Joanne Reed of MSNBC, called The Sit-In. In 1968, America was embroiled in protest over civil rights and the Vietnam War. In that tumultuous time, The Tonight Show host Johnny Carson turned over his hosting duties for an entire week to actor and activist Harry Belafonte. That was probably the blackest week on network television until Roots in 1977, when Roots aired for an entire week on ABC. That's probably the blackest week on network television. Now, Harry Belafonte's cast of guests included Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Bobby Kennedy, just months before they were both assassinated, during a week that's been mostly lost in American history. Thankfully, is now being revisited in a new Peacock documentary, executive produced by MSNBC host Joy Ann Reid and directed by award-winning filmmaker Yoruba Richen, Richen, aptly titled The Sit-In. Harry Belafonte hosts The Tonight Show. At the time, Johnny Carson's pioneering late-night variety show had become one of the country's most influential platforms. So the move to have Harry Belafonte take this mainstream institution and transform it into a multicultural and political experience, introducing white America to his world of art and activism was unprecedented. Probably scared the hell out of some white people too. I'm just saying. In 1968, when they turn on, especially down in the South, they turn on the TV to see Johnny Carson, and they're like, they're adjusting the TV. They say Johnny Carson grew a fro and he's black. What happened? They're adjusting the TV, and only 2 dials on the TV then. They ain't have remote. Most people didn't have remote control on TV in 1968. They're trying to figure out what's going on. I mean, you can imagine. I don't know how many people had heart attacks when they turned on their TV and saw this black man on on the Tonight Show, but I could imagine, the number of calls that they got for EMS and things like this. I could imagine that whole week, okay, especially in the South. Now, Harry Belafonte became the first black person to host a late night show, even if it was only for 1 week, as Richard Nixon's problematic and controversial presidency loomed ominously on the horizon. His guests also included notable African Americans of the day like Lena Horne, Nipsey Russell, not Nipsey Hussle, the rapper Nipsey Russell, who Nipsey Hussle is named after. Nipsey Russell, who was the Tin Man in The Wiz with Michael Jackson, okay, and Stephanie. Stephanie's name escaped me. I met her. It'll come to me. Nipsey Russell, Bill Cosby, and others. Stephanie Mills. Okay, I met Stephanie Mills because I knew her ex-husband. Long story, but I met Stephanie Mills. Nipsey Russell, Bill Cosby, and others all engaged in searing, in-depth interviews taking place in an America that was forced to really contend with itself as a country on the verge of radical change, The Civil Rights and Voting Rights Acts, for example, which still left African Americans behind economically, signaled some progress, no matter how incremental. Okay. Each guest came across as thoughtful and admirable, but also shaken by the uncertainty of the time. It was clear and understandable that none of them had answers to the country's complications. But the show wasn't all politics, as host Harry Belafonte also entertained his audience with comedy and music, watching Paul Newman play the trombone, reliving his role as an expatriate trombonist in Martin Ritt's 1961 drama Paris Blues, which co-starred Sidney Poitier and Joanne Woodward, was especially a treat. The charming Harry Belafonte also verbally jousted with announcer Ed McMahon. Remember Ed McMahon from Star Search? Ed McMahon, and showed home videos of his family on vacation. So check out the rest of this article here This deals with the sit-in. It's a fantastic documentary that's on Peacock, executive produced by Joanne Reed of MSNBC, The Readout. Okay. And the name of this article from IndieWire.com is The Sit-In, Revisit the Lost Week in 1968. Harry Belafonte hosted The Tonight Show. And you got some, people they haven't been right since. Just scared the hell out of them. There's too much. There's too much black on this little television, this little I don't know what size of TV, with a little 20-inch, 19-inch, 17-inch black and white TV. They just scared some people to death when they turn on the television. They thought Johnny Carson was going to be on, and they see all these Negroes for a whole week. Oh my God. All right, so rest in peace, Harry Belafonte. All right, I gotta switch gears here. I want to go to this next story here. So Saturday, April 29th, I interviewed Dr. Charles Finch. Okay. Dr. Charles Finch is a Egyptian scholar on ancient Egypt, ancient African history, things of this nature. And those that study this type of information, they're familiar with Dr. Charles Finch. We're going to clip number one, Doug. We talked about Queen Cleopatra, the last pharaoh, and he refuted this nonsense also coming from Egyptian officials about her ethnicity. Let's go to clip number one, please, Doug.
The hieroglyphic language of the Egyptians and launched Egyptology as a discipline. Right. And but what happened is that when they could read now the literature and the inscriptions in the Egyptian language, the inscriptions that were carved out of the walls, the papyri they could find, the clay tablets, they began to realize that this was a fantastic, fabulous civilization, which even up by 1820 had not been exceeded or excelled. Now, the Greeks, people talk about the Greeks. I don't have any problem with the Greeks because the Greeks recognized the primacy of ancient Egypt and said so. Right. Especially Herodotus. Right. Herodotus says, don't tell me about what he was a Greek now. He himself was a Greek. He said, don't tell me about what the Greeks did. The Egyptians did it all first, and they're the ones that taught the Greeks. Mm-hmm. This is Herodotus talking. Correct. And because Herodotus is the so-called father of history. Right. Now, let's get back to Cleopatra for a minute. I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. Cleopatra was far more, shall we say, proud, far more committed to her Egyptian ancestry through her mother than to her Ptolemaic one, to her father. Maybe I'm overstating that a little bit, but not by much. Okay. Because she, like I said, she considered herself an heir of the pharaohs. She considered herself basically an Egyptian pharaoh. Now, there had been three or four previous female pharaohs in Egyptian history, going all the way back to the first dynasty. Hatshepsut being one. Right. That's well known. And there have been a few others. There were three others. And Cleopatra considered herself in that same line. She didn't consider herself a mere queen. Mm-hmm. Now, by the way, there was brother-sister marriage among the royalty of ancient Egypt. I think she may have even married her brother so that she could put herself in a position of power. But sooner or later, he was gotten rid of. Right. Cleopatra was ruthless like that, but she's extremely dynamic, though. And as I said, she knew how to wrap, and men just kind of, she wrapped them around her little finger, as they said. And you know what happened when Augustus, as we know, it was Julius Caesar that came first, right? And she wrapped him around her finger. Then Mark Antony came second. She wrapped him around her finger and destroyed his marriage. And then he eventually committed suicide because the fleets of Augustus had defeated his fleets, his military arm.
and he committed it. And then also Cleopatra had fled the field of battle, and he just became totally dispirited. And he went to go back to Egypt, literally. And this scene sounds melodramatic, but so he could die in the arms of Cleopatra, if you can imagine that. Yeah, this seems all very, hokey and made up in Hollywood and movies, but it happened.
Yeah, it sounds like it happened. But yeah, it did, and he committed suicide. She committed suicide as well. She died in 30 BC. So you mentioned her mother. Now, from some research on this, it's believed her mother was Cleopatra V. Is that correct?
No, I don't think. No, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
All I've ever heard or seen is that her mother was Egyptian.
Okay.
And by the way, Zahi Hawass just rejects that. Now, he has any reason for objecting, but he wants to remove all traces of Africa from.
Okay, we'll pause it right there and pick this up on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM Superstation, the Future Radio. That was Dr. Charles Finch. That's an interview I did on Saturday, April 29th. And the one of the other African queens of Egypt who ruled as a pharaoh was Sebekenfru. Sebekenfru, Sbekenefru. All right. There's a piece from Britannica.com on Sebekenfru. We talked about this also when I interviewed Professor Jane Small, and we dealt with the Woman King. All right. You had African female pharaohs as well. And Queen Cleopatra VII ruled as a pharaoh. Okay, we'll be back in a few minutes. 910 AM Superstation WFDF on Michael Imhotep, the African History Network show. Stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Stand by. How's everybody doing? All right. Yeah, it was Diana Ross. It was Diana Ross, and Joel said it was Diana Ross, and it was Diana Ross. So it was Stephanie Mills in the play, The Wiz, and Diana Ross in the movie, The Wiz with Michael Jackson. Okay, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. Back from break in 3 minutes. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Who still needs to register for the online history classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays? On Saturdays is Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa. Understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And on Sundays, it is Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement. Back from break in 2 minutes. Back from break in 2 minutes.
The Superstation, the oldest radio station in town since 1922. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. Calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, we'll go to the phone lines here in a few minutes. I got to get back to this clip. This is the interview I did. This is an excerpt of the interview I did with Dr. Charles Finch, Egyptian scholar of ancient African history, Nile Valley civilization history. We were talking about Queen Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh, and he responded. He refuted the Egyptian official statement that Netflix's Queen Cleopatra had no ancestry. There's an article from NBC News that came out Thursday, April 28th. That's probably the strongest statement from the Egyptian government. And I asked them about that. You're going to hear that clip also. Okay, let's go back to the clip, please, Doug.
All very, hokey and made up in Hollywood and movies, but it happened.
Yeah, it sounds like a movie, but yeah, it did, and he committed suicide as well. She died in 30 BC. So you mentioned her mother. Now, from some research on this, is believed her mother was Cleopatra V. Is that correct?
No, I don't think. No, I haven't seen that.
Okay.
All I've ever heard or seen is that her mother was Egyptian.
Okay.
And by the way, Zahi Hawass just rejects that. Now, he has any reason for objecting, but he wants to remove all traces of Africa from at least from the dynastic line of ancient Egypt.
Okay. So let me.
Wait. There's one other thing I want to say. Then we can get to questions. One is when Augustus finally, he conquered the Mark Antony. Mark Antony committed suicide. Augustus came to Egypt to take over, the empire. But you know what he wouldn't do?
What?
He wouldn't look Cleopatra in the eye. Because by that time she had such a reputation that he was afraid of getting hypnotized by her.
Right.
If you can imagine that.
Right.
He would not look her in the eye. And it was after that encounter with Augustus that the famous story that Shakespeare and everybody else sort of repeated. She took an asp, which was a cobra. Mm-hmm. And she actually took it in her hand and had it sink its fangs into her. Can you imagine? Right. She had a flair for the dramatic, that's for sure. And she died that way.
Right, from a snake bite.
I'm sorry?
From a snake bite.
Yes, from a snake bite. And she's probably, a lot of people consider her the most fascinating woman in history. Well, you could argue, you could say yes or no, you could argue about that, but, she came real close to ruling Rome and the Roman Empire.
Right.
Through the two men that she just completely entranced. Julius Caesar on the one hand, Mark Antony on the other. And Augustus said, no, if I go back, Augustus came and took over the empire and defeated Mark Antony, and he committed suicide and all this. And Augustus knew better. When he finally confronted Cleopatra, he would not look her in the eye.
Right.
So he was afraid that that she was going to mesmerize him, hypnotize him. What can I say?
So let me try to put a fine point on this, because I know we've run out of time, and I want you to talk about your new book as well. Okay, now you said that on her mother's side, you said her mother was Egyptian. Now, the period of time that we're talking about, first of all, the Greeks invade under Alexander the Greek in 332 BC, and they conquer in 323 BC. Okay. And now, Queen Cleopatra VII is born in 69 BC. Now, this is about 700 years before the Arab invasion, 639 AD. Now, when you say that her mother was Egyptian, what at this point in time in 69 BC, after the you had the Persians invading, you had the Persians who already invaded, you had the Greeks who have invaded, and the Greeks have been there for a few hundred years. When we say Egyptian in 69 BC,
Black, I know what you're getting at. No, still black people.
Still black people.
They didn't stop being black people.
Okay.
Those people, those different conquerors, they came and they ruled at this. They ruled the empire or the country of Egypt. All right. But they didn't change who the people were.
Okay.
And in fact, each one of them would take an Egyptian wife and or concubine, shall we say?
Right.
But they didn't change who the people were. They remained black people right up until the time of the Arab invasion, which was, as you say, in the 7th century AD. Right. After that, and you already mentioned them. You're right. The Persians, the Greek Macedonians, the Romans, and the Arabs finally. And the Arabs came in droves to Egypt. In droves.
And what I heard historically about the Ptolemies is that they would either marry or intermix with a black Egyptian woman.
Yep.
Okay.
The answer to that is absolutely. Yes, absolutely true. So, as I say, there is a strong mixed race, I guess the only way I can put it, element in Cleopatra's history. And as I say, her mother was an Egyptian. So yeah, when that picture of her that Jada Pinkett Smith is going to use, or the actress,
yes,
that's right. Don't listen to Zahi Hawa. Let him foam at the mouth about the fact that a black woman is representing Cleopatra. That's his issue. Now, I've been to Egypt, I think a dozen times, and I've interacted and spoke with Egyptians, including a year and a half ago. Not all of them take that attitude that Zahi Hawa does. Right. And especially since when so many of them, not so many of them, but a number of them have been the guides for tour guides that were led by people like Asa Hilliard and others who schooled them. Said, look, taught them John Henry Clark, even Doc Ben Yochanan. And they once they were schooled, they accepted it. They weren't like the Zahi Hawass is just he lost his mind.
Right, and
he can't take it. He for whatever reason he cannot accept that historical reality.
Right.
What is it? What do you do? Nothing you can do with somebody like him. But of course, now he is the one who is in charge of Egyptian antiquities.
Well, he just I think he just resigned from that position or something. He is not in that position anymore. He's about to go on a tour in the U.S. starting in May
of the United States.
Yeah.
Of America. Now, here's what I would like to see happen. I don't know if it will or not. I would like there be a large, solid contingent of black people to attend every one of his lectures and presentations in every city where he goes. Now, will that happen? I don't know.
Right.
And when he starts talking what he talked, then he needs to be challenged. He needs to be challenged. Yes, I know about that upcoming tour.
Right.
I don't know if he's coming to Atlanta or not, but he's making. I think he's supposed to be here for at least 3 weeks.
Yeah.
I'm not if I'm not mistaken. But we'll. Now what'll happen? I'm going to ask my friend. You already mentioned Tony Browder. You call him Tony Browder. I call him Anthony Karakamoon Grouter. As you know, he was one of the co-excavators of the temple tomb of Karakamoon from the 25th dynasty. So I actually gave him that name. And when I talk to him, I say Karak.
Yeah, I have his book.
But anyway,
also, dealing with Karakamoon. I have his book as well. So yeah. Let me ask you this question. So in the article from Variety.com written by Tina Garabi is the director of this installment of African Queens from executive producer Jada Pinkett Smith that deals with Cleopatra VII. And in the article, she says what the historians can confirm is that it is more likely that Cleopatra looked like actress Adele James, African-American actress Adele James, than Elizabeth Taylor ever did.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and say
no. Let's not even talk about the movie. Have you ever seen the movie Ten Commandments?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it since it first came out when I was but a lad. I've seen it.
Okay, pause it right there, Doug. Okay, we're gonna pick this up on the other side of the break. So it was a fantastic interview I did with Dr. Charles Finch. I've had a busy weekend. Okay, I taught 2 online classes, did 1 interview with an Egyptian scholar, and I'm doing the African History Network show today as well. We're going to pick this up on the other side of the break. We'll go to the phone lines. We'll go to PJ and anybody else on the phone lines, because I asked him about this article from NBCnews.com. Cleopatra was not black. Egypt tells Netflix ahead of new series. You don't want to miss Dr. Charles Finch's response to what the Egyptian government had to say. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stand by, back from break in 4 minutes. How's everybody doing? All right. If you like this type of information, also, you can support the African History Network, $ the AHN show through Cash App, $ the AHN show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Visit our website, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, theafricanhistorynetwork.com, because you can register for the free online class I did today. Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Black Power movement, and Civil Rights movement, 1800, 1968. Okay, we'll be back from break in 3 minutes. Stand by. Back from break in 1 minute.
The Superstation, Detroit's only African American talk radio. The views and opinions expressed on any program are those of the producers and or the persons appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of 910 AM Superstation or Adele Media. If great programming is what you want, 910 AM is what you need.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have the areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. We have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right, we're going back to this clip from this fantastic interview I did with Dr. Charles Finch, Egyptian scholar, ancient Egyptian scholar, author, historian. His website is charlessfinch.com, Finch, charlessfinch.com. And he has a new book coming out in the next couple of months or so. You can pre-order it at his website, charlessfinch.com. It's called Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-year history. Nile Valley Civilization, a 10,000-year history. This interview is on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. We had difficulties with his internet signal early in the interview. So at first we had him on video. Then we had to switch to telephone for his side. For him, we had to switch to telephone. So I'm going through editing the video. We should have the corrected edited video up tomorrow, up on Monday. All right, Doug, let's go back to let's go back to this interview, please.
Cleopatra. In the article, she says, what the historians can confirm is that it is more likely Cleopatra looked like Adele James, actress Adele James, African American actress Adele James, than Elizabeth Taylor ever did.
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Now,
and
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead and finish.
No. And let's not even talk about the movie. Have you ever seen the movie Ten Commandments?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it since it was first came out when I was but a lad. I've seen it about 3 times.
Right.
The Egyptians didn't look like anyone in that movie.
Right.
Charlton Heston, Yul Brynner. There was nobody that, in terms of their physical characteristics, looked like what the Egyptians would have looked like in the time of Moses. That would have been, 1300 BC, a little earlier.
Right.
There was nobody in Egypt that looked like that. But, this is Hollywood.
Exactly.
Now, I don't know why, we don't have to get off into that too much.
Right.
But there's been a systematic attempt, once they, like I said, when they began to realize just what Egypt had accomplished, there was a concerted effort to de-Africanize ancient Egypt.
Yes.
Still going on.
Yes.
Still going on.
Yes. So further in the article, and there's one other quick article I want to just highlight that just came out Thursday also, and then I want you to talk about your book, and we're going to give you a website address as well. So further in the article, Tina Garabi says, so was Cleopatra black? We don't know for sure, but we can be certain she wasn't white like Elizabeth Taylor. She says, we need to have a conversation with ourselves about our colorism and the internalized white supremacy that Hollywood has indoctrinated us with. Because in the article, she talks about how Cleopatra being portrayed white somehow for some people increases her value or increases her worth, whereas portraying her as a melanated person who has some like Black African ancestry somehow cheapens her worth, lessens her worth.
Yeah, I mean, you see, I used to foam at the mouth with this kind of stuff. I used to grit my teeth and foam at the mouth and get angry and wanting to hurt people, whatnot. You would hear stuff like that. I'm at the age now where what I do is laugh at them.
Right.
I laugh at these people. I laugh at the ideas. I laugh at what they're trying to say.
Exactly.
No. Cleopatra didn't look anything like Elizabeth Taylor. Nothing. And Moses didn't look like anything like Charlton Heston.
Right.
And Ramesses II didn't look like Yul Brynner.
Right.
Jeez.
Right. Exactly. And this is propaganda from the media. Why? So, in talking to you and coming up with the title for this interview, you referred to Queen Cleopatra as the last pharaoh. Okay.
Yeah.
And some people who I guess think they know about African history but really don't say, oh, she wasn't a pharaoh, or the last pharaoh was 600 years before that. Why do you refer to Cleopatra as the last pharaoh?
Because that's how she thought of herself, and that's what she called herself. And that's, in effect, she did have Egyptian ancestry.
Yeah.
So she wasn't just a Ptolemaic Macedonian.
Right.
She kept, and even the Ptolemies got so that they de-emphasized their Macedonian ancestry and increasingly Egyptianized themselves, and married into the local populace, as we've already seen.
Right.
So they considered themselves, they wanted to rule in the line of the pharaohs. They weren't trying to be Macedonian kings. They wanted to be thought of. They wanted to live like and be thought of as pharaohs. And Cleopatra was no different. She was, as far as she was concerned, she was an Egyptian. And therefore, she was a pharaoh. She was a pharaoh. And she was either the fourth or fifth female pharaoh in Egyptian history, because there had been women pharaohs in Egyptian history.
Right, exactly.
Earlier, going all the way back to the first, the earlier dynasties.
Yes. Okay. And then, lastly, there was this article that just came out Thursday, April 28th, and NBC News has this article. Zahi Hawass is quoted in it, of course. Now, this one, this contains a statement from the Egyptian Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities. But the name of this article is "Cleopatra Was Not Black. Egypt Tells Netflix in Growing Feud Ahead of New Series." Okay. And I just want to highlight something here, because it's important for us to have scholars like you and others that push back on nonsense like this. Okay. In this article here, let me bring it back up here just a second, as I have it on the screen. Okay. So it says that Queen Cleopatra, which is released May 10th, features Adele James in the lead role, a casting decision that the streaming giant Netflix says is, quote, a nod to the centuries-long conversation about the ruler's race, end quote, but which officials in Cairo have dismissed as, quote, blatant historical fallacy, end quote, blatant historical fallacy. The government statement from Cairo, the government statement issued Thursday marked an escalation in a feud that has sparked demands for the show's cancellation amid a broader debate over representation in popular culture. So they go on to cite the Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities, argued that the documentary nature of the feature, quote, requires those in charge of its production to investigate accuracy and rely on historical and scientific facts, end quote. They quote Dr. Mustafa Waziri, Secretary General of the Supreme Council of Antiquities, said in the statement that Cleopatra's appearance in the show was, quote, a falsification of Egyptian history and a blatant historical fallacy, end quote. I know you've hit on it before, but for those just tuning in now, how would you respond to that?
Besides getting mad, angry, ready to go, I'd love to go face to face and chin to chin with any of these people. It reminds me of the situation of the Cairo Symposium in 1974, when Shekhanta Job, not Diab, Job, and Teofilo Benga, faced off against a phalanx of European and Egyptologists about just this very issue. And after this debate was concluded, the moderator debate says, well, only Doctors Job and Obenga came to this discussion, this debate, prepared to make their case that the ancient Egyptians were an black African race, and they won the day. Now, this is 1974, and they were up against Europeans and Arabs who were trying to remove all trace of Africa.
All right. So that was another excerpt of the fantastic interview I did with Dr. Charles Finch. You can, we'll put that on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, but it's on my YouTube channel and Facebook fan page, The African History Network. Visit his website, Charles S. Finch, FINCH.com, CharlesSFinch.com, and get his new book, Nile Valley Civilization, A 10,000-Year History. Okay, we're coming up on the break. When we come back from the break, we'll go straight to the phone lines. Listen to the African History Network show. I'm Michael Imhotep, 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by. Back from break in 4 minutes. All right, 15 minutes left in this show. Stand by, everybody. Who still needs to register for the online history classes that I teach on Saturdays and Sundays? We'll post a link here. You know, we did a free class today. We have the information at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. and AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also. If you go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, it'll redirect to the new website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, because I was able to get the old domain name back after I paid $174 plus $90. It's damn near $264. Like I say, this stuff is not free. We lost the domain name, had to pay outstanding bill and then pay another fee to get the domain name back, all this stuff. Back from break in 2 minutes. Stand by. Okay, we're going to talk about, we're going to the phone lines. We're going to squeeze in some information dealing with Emmett Till, dealing with Carolyn Bryant, passed away age 88. Stand by. Where is the okay, I need the document. Okay. And it is from the Department of Justice.
I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. On the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world. A lot of people don't know what the hell they're talking about. They may have their areas of expertise, but some people need to learn how to stay in their own lane. If you don't know, just say you don't know. So we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to jump right into this.
Catch it all right here on 910 AM Superstation.
Welcome back to the African History Network show. All right, let's go to the phone lines. Do we still have PJ? Let's go to the phone lines. Whoever we have on line one. Welcome to the African History Network show. Thanks for holding. Tell us where you're calling from.
Hi, this is PG, and I'm calling
PG.
from Oakland County, Michigan.
Okay, PG.
You know, I was listening. Yes, PG, like in Pretty Gorgeous.
Okay.
Parental guidance.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Rated PG.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was listening to the gentleman that you were interviewing, and he said that as this person making their rounds to tour and talking about African American history, it would be great if a lot of Black people would go. And I think that our history is very, very important. I think that we should always want to learn about the history. But what I've heard people say is when they go to some of these seminars or symposiums and they're listening to the evolution of our race and going all the way back and the Egyptians and the Moors, they always feel like sometimes the presenters make them feel stupid because they don't know. And my question to you would be, is there anybody that knows everything, and even if you ask them, can they tell you, or should the people doing the presentation be grateful that, number one, the people came out, number two, they want to hear it, but you have to start somewhere when you're learning.
Okay, so
what are your thoughts about that?
That was Dr. Charles Finch that I was interviewing. Dr. Charles Finch was talking about Dr. Zahi Hawass. Dr. Zahi Hawass is the former, I think his position was former minister of tourism and antiquities in Egypt. Dr. Zahi Hawass is going on a tour in May and June in the U.S., discrediting the Africanity, the Black African presence in ancient Egypt. Okay, and Dr. Charles Finch was saying that there needs to be a contingent of African Americans at each one of those lectures that Dr. Zahi Hawass goes to, Dr. Zahi Hawass does, to challenge him on this nonsense that Dr. Zahi Hawass is saying. That's what Dr. Charles Finch was saying. Now, as far as people, yes, people should be grateful that people come out to their presentations, things like this. Sometimes people, sometimes you have scholars, what have you, that sometimes talk down to people. A lot of times they don't. A lot of times they may not mean something negative by it. It depends upon who it is in the situation. Okay, but we have to. We can't become so conscious that we become unconscious to the fact that everybody's not as conscious as we are. So we have to understand that everybody has to start somewhere. So we have to be cognizant of that as well. Okay, all right, PG.
Now you were talking, if I could just ask you one other quick thing. So you were talking about the complexion and colorism of Cleopatra, and the fact that Julius Caesar and Mark Antony didn't want to look in her face because they thought they would just be mesmerized and mind blown to the point that she could do whatever.
No, he wasn't.
I always thought
he
that because Mark Antony was Julius Caesar's number one man, that he couldn't look in her eyes because he betrayed Julius Caesar by having an encounter with her.
Okay. All right. Thanks for calling. We're almost out of time. Okay. That's not what Dr. Charles Finch was saying. But anyway, I got to move on. All right. Now, So check out this article from the Washington Post. Carolyn Bryant, elusive accuser in the lynching of Emmett Till, dies at age 88. All right. So this past week, I think it was Wednesday or Thursday, we got the news that Carolyn Bryant Donham passed away. Okay, accuser of Emmett Till, the wife of one of Emmett Till's confessed killers. She was a central figure in the 1955 murder that helped spur the civil rights movement. Okay, so this is from April 27th, 2023. April 27th, 2023. That was Thursday. All right, now, so in this article, it talks about Carolyn Bryant Donham and talks about so she had cancer, she was in hospice, and so we know she passed away. There were no charges filed against her. Now, what I want to get to, you can read this article here. What I want to get to is in December 6, 2021, the Department of Justice ended a investigation that they opened right around 2018, I think it was, after the book, The Blood of Emmett Till, came out. Okay. The book, The Blood of Emmett Till, that was written by Professor Timothy Tyson. All right. They mentioned the book in this article. If we scroll down, so this investigation was closed December 6, 2021. All right. If we go to the reason why no charges were filed here in this investigation that ended in 2021 is because of lack of evidence. Now, I've gone through this before, like 3 times here on the African History Network show. We've gone through this document. It's at justice.gov. You can check it out yourself. And I did a 2-hour presentation on Friday. I did a 2-hour broadcast on Friday dealing with this as well. Okay, right after I did Roland Martin show. So we did that on Facebook and YouTube. If you go to page 5, which deals with section D, Timothy Tyson's claim that Carolyn Bryant Donham recanted her testimony. Okay, so what happened was Professor Timothy Tyson interviewed Carolyn Bryant Donham in 2008 twice. He made 2 audio recordings. He was interviewing her for his book, The Blood of Emmett Till. And he didn't say anything about this smoking gun evidence that she recanted testimony until about a month before his book came out. Okay, shortly before the publication of the book, The Blood of Emmett Till, 2017, Professor Timothy Tyson revealed to several media outlets that Carolyn Bryant Donham had, during an interview with him nearly a decade earlier, recanted the account that she had provided under oath during a hearing at Roy Bryant's trial. That was her husband, her then husband. Tyson's account suggested that Carolyn Bryant Donham lied in court in 1955. Statute of limitations for that court trial was about 7 years, so statute of limitations expired, and lied during the FBI's 2004 investigation. Specifically, Timothy Tyson stated that Carolyn Bryant Donham admitted that her representation that Till had made verbal advances toward her in the store was not true. You got to go through and read this, because when they go through and they ask him for the evidence to back up the claims that he was making in the media and in books, he couldn't provide the evidence to back up the claims. Okay. Those watching on Facebook and YouTube, keep watching for a few more minutes. We're out of time here on 910 AM Superstation WFDF. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week. Peace. All right, we're going to continue just for a couple more minutes, and I got to get out of here. So when you go through, so this pages 4 through 8 are the most important pages in this document. Pages 4 through 8. This is a 16-page document. Okay, in the book, Tyson identified a September 8, 2008 interview with Carolyn Bryant Donham. So this is page, I think this is page 6. Which page is this? 6 or 8? 17. I think this is page either 5 or 6. In the book, In the book, Tyson identified a September 8, 2008 interview with Carolyn Bryant Donham and, quote, accompanying handwritten notes by the author, end quote, as his sources for these and other statements of Carolyn Bryant Donham's included throughout his book. Tyson also relied upon a draft memoir that Carolyn Bryant Donham had written, and it was a 99-page draft memoir that we found out about some months ago, but had not published. Okay, they talk about the current FBI investigation, and then let's see, scroll down. I want to go to, let's go to Timothy Tyson doesn't have, okay. The FBI quickly identified a significant obstacle in its investigation. This is page 5, the middle of page 5. Everybody needs to go read this. If you've been talking about Emmett Till, you've been talking about Carolyn Bryant Donham passing away, if you've been saying, oh, charges should have been filed, things like this, okay, you should read this document. I've read it 3 times. That's why what I was saying is totally different. There's a lack of evidence to file charges. There's a lack of evidence admissible in court to file charges. Okay, now, Professor Timothy Tyson conducted 2 separate interviews with Carolyn Bryant Donham and recorded and transcribed both. However, the key statements that Carolyn Bryant Donham reportedly made to him recanting her previous testimony were neither recorded nor transcribed. The FBI learned that Tyson had lost one of the recordings, the one during which Carolyn Bryant Donham reportedly recanted her earlier statements in sworn testimony, because he said he came in the door, she started spilling the beans before he could start recording. Okay, now, and he said he had 2 audio recordings. He lost one of the audio recordings. Now, first of all, the first problem is that you did 2 interviews in 2008, but you didn't say anything about it until 2017. Why'd you wait 9 years to say something publicly? Maybe if you had said something earlier, there were witnesses that were still alive. Maybe justice could have been brought, but you waited 9 years to say something, number one. Number two, why didn't you back up your audio recordings on external hard drives? I have 7 external hard drives to back up my research. Why didn't you back up your audio recordings on external hard drives? The third problem is that he provided 1 audio recording that he had left, and then he provided 2 written transcripts of the audio recordings. The FBI reviewed all of the evidence that he turned over to them. They said in neither the 1 audio recording that you provided us or the 2 transcripts of the 2 audio recordings, there is no recantation in this evidence that you turned over to us. The other thing is that he has no witnesses. Professor Timothy Tyson has no witnesses. Now, Carolyn Bryant Donham's daughter-in-law was present for both interviews. She said, and she was interviewed by the FBI, the daughter-in-law was interviewed by the FBI. She said that Carolyn Bryant Donham never recanted her testimony. So when it came time, when you go through and read, especially pages 4 through 8 are critical of this report, because I read it when it came out. Okay, I printed it up December 7th, 2021, and I read it when it came out. All right. And when the information came out in 2017 that she recanted her testimony and all these articles were being written, I covered this story here on the African History Network show. But I had my doubts and questions because I kept reading article after article, and I'm looking for real evidence of a recantation, and it was not in any of those articles. And you would see statements like, she started spilling the beans as soon as I came in the door or something like that before he started recording, what have you. So once you start recording, why didn't you say, okay, I'm recording now? Can you repeat that? Can you start at the beginning? But when you get deeper into this report, Carolyn Bryant Donham said that Tyson was brought on to help her write her memoir. She said that Professor Timothy Tyson started recording as soon as he came through the door. He said she started spilling the beans before he could start recording. Then he kept changing his explanation of whether or not he actually recorded a recantation. And he also kept changing his explanation of what happened to the second recording that he said he lost. When you go through and read the 16-page report from the Department of Justice, you see that there's a lack of evidence to even get a grand jury to indict her based upon evidence admissible in court. One. Two, if for some strange reason she was put on trial, when her defense attorneys, because she's not going to go in the court by herself, this is not people's court, she's going to have defense attorneys. Professor Timothy Tyson is going to be called as a witness, because when you read this report, the investigation was opened back up because of the allegations he was making in his book and allegations he was making in the media. So when the prosecution would have to put him on the witness stand, well, on cross-examination, her defense attorneys would destroy Professor Timothy Tyson on cross-examination. I could destroy him on cross-examination. I haven't even been to law school. I've taken 2 law classes, but I could destroy him on cross-examination. There's so many holes in his argument. So this is why when this 2021 investigation was closed December 6, 2021, no charges were brought because there's lack of evidence. This is what I said then. I say the same thing now. If you actually go through and read this. All right. So this is at justice.gov. We have to do more research, take emotionalism out of this. Now, I wanted justice for Emmett Till, but I said, once I read this, I said, when December 2021, when I did my broadcast on this, and then also when we got the news about the arrest warrant from 1955 and they were trying to get her arrested, all this, I said, no, they're not going to arrest her. It's a lack of evidence. Okay. I wanted justice for Emmett Till, but I told you it's not going to be based upon this evidence here. This is not, there's not enough evidence. And see, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. You can say whatever you want to say in the book. You can say whatever you want to say in the media. But in court, the burden of proof is on the prosecution. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt in criminal court, based upon the evidence, that she recanted testimony. To do that, you need evidence. You have audio recordings, you have video recordings. What is this based upon? She has a witness saying she did not recant testimony. Professor Timothy Tyson has no witnesses saying that she did recant testimony. He can't provide any evidence to prove she did. When the FBI investigated, she said she didn't. And they even talk about how, even though when they interviewed her, she gave additional details that about the surrounding the killing of Emmett Till and what happened that day in the trial and things like this. She gave additional details, but she did not say anything that contradicted what she even said in the 2004 investigation. So when if they took her to court, she doesn't have to prove that she did not recant her testimony. The prosecution has to prove that she did recant testimony. Okay. And not what they would have to prove is that when she was interviewed for this investigation that closed 2021, that she gave false statements to the interviewers, false statements to the FBI. That's perjury. Okay. Giving false statements. That's like a 5-year felony. She cannot be tried on perjury. She cannot be brought up on perjury charges dealing with the 1955 trial, because the statute of limitation on perjury is like 5 to 7 years, depending upon the state. But giving false statements to the FBI in an investigation, you can be brought up on charges dealing with that. Okay. But they would have to have evidence to prove that you're lying. Now, even though they said that statements that she gave in 1955 during the trial, things like this, is not believed that those statements were credible. Having evidence to prove that she is lying is a higher bar that has to be met. And when you go through and read this, there's no evidence to prove that. As Denzel Washington told Ethan Hawke in the movie Training Day, it's not what you believe, it's what you can prove. You have to be able to prove. The burden of proof is on the prosecution. They have to be able to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt in court. And based upon the information that Professor Timothy Tyson is talking about, there's no evidence of that. Because when it came time for him to provide the evidence, he was interviewed by the FBI. When it came time for him to provide the evidence to back up the claims he was making in his book, he couldn't do it. Now, maybe if he had said something in 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, before like some of those last witnesses died, maybe they could have gotten some type of justice. All right, look, we have to get out of here. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills, etc. Register for the online history classes I teach on Saturdays and Sundays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. We did a free class session of Black resistance movements from the Haitian Revolution, U.S. Civil War, Civil Rights Movement, and Black Power Movement today. So as soon as we have the information on the homepage of our website, you can still register for both classes, but you can register for that free class that I did. And that full course is on sale, is discounted, $40, regularly $130. Click right here for the free class session from April 30th, 2023 at our website, TheAHNShow.com. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. We have a bundle pack where you can get both courses. The bundle pack is on sale, $80. That's a $300 value. You also get 5 of my lectures free in digital format. It'll be in the video library. And then the class I teach on Saturdays, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, where they didn't teach you in school. Our next class will be Saturday, May 6, 2023, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, right now is correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next week.